Okay, so we'll get started. I realized that this talk is very similar to the talk that Wallace gave last week. But it bears to be, what this topic is. His was on defeating your enemies, mine is on letting go. Very similar. But I want to start out with a poem by Melody Beattie. Letting go doesn't mean we don't care. Letting go doesn't mean we shut down. Letting go means we stop trying to force outcomes and stop making people behave. It means we give up resistance to the way things are for this moment. It means we stop trying to do the impossible, controlling that which we cannot, and instead focus on what is possible, which usually means taking care of ourselves. And we do this with gentleness, kindness, and love as much as possible. So that's my whole talk. I'm done. Right? So the topic is the art of letting go. And when I first started this practice, I didn't know how to let go. And I would have never thought that there was an art to letting go. But over the years, I've learned that there is an art to letting go. And that letting go is just as natural as being born. But we don't know it. We have to train ourselves to let go. We have to, at first, when we first start learning how to let go, we're fumbling and we don't know what we're doing, and we're trying to force and we're trying to control letting go. And if you haven't noticed, you can't force letting go, right? It's a moment of grace, letting go, right? Um, I lead a retreat every year with John Orr. He's a Vipassana Buddhist teacher. And every single year he does the same exercise. I don't know if you've ever been on the New Year's retreat with him, but it's a week long. We co-teach. And he has people clench their hands and hold their hands and clench them as hard as they can, or at least one hand, and keep clenching and keep squeezing and keep clenching and keep squeezing and holding for the longest time until people are getting cramps in their hands. And then he says, okay, now release your hand. And everybody's like, oh, thank God. And he's saying that that's letting go, right? And you can imagine letting go as something that we've been holding on and clinging to, and then we set it down, right? We're just setting it down like we're setting a heavy weight down. Now, Buddhism is all about letting go. The Buddhist path of practice, the first noble truth is that we're suffering. The second noble truth is we're suffering because we're clinging. We're holding on with dear life to what we want to hold on to, what we think we need to hold on to. And this is where all of our suffering comes from. The third noble truth is that we can be free from this suffering. The fourth noble truth is follow the Noble Eightfold Path, and you learn how to let go of clinging. And then you're free. Because if we're not clinging, we're free. Right? That doesn't mean that everything's going to be hunky-dory and everything's going to be great every single minute. It just means that we're not going to be adding suffering through clinging to things being. How do we want things to be? Just one word. Call it out. Peaceful. Easy. We want things to be easy. Happy. Happy. We want things to be happy. Right? We want to be peaceful. We want to have good energy. We want to be happy. We want to sleep well every single night. We want people all to love us and like us and accept us, but that's not always the way it is, right? So part of our practice of letting go is learning to never cling to begin with. To see the nature of reality. The nature of reality is that every single relationship we have is going to end at some point. right? But we kick and scream and get really upset when relationships end in a way that we don't want them to. This is Thich Nhat Hanh. People have a hard time letting go of their suffering. Out of fear of the unknown, they prefer suffering that is familiar. And he also said another quote is, those who don't learn how to let go are the biggest fools of all. But sometimes we become habituated to our suffering, like the Stockholm Syndrome. I remember when I first started doing this practice, I realized I was addicted to suffering. I was so used to suffering all the time. I was a huge victim, and everything that didn't go my way, I did the poor me routine, and I was constantly, oh, poor me, and how could they do this to me, and why are they being this way, and why can't they behave? You know, any of this sound familiar? Can I have a hallelujah?
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, exactly, right? It's interesting. So what are we letting go of? We're letting go of that which causes us suffering, right? What are some of I had 2 groups today that I led, and this one lady was saying that she can't stand it when she's uncomfortable physically. And if she has any physical pain at all, she can't be with anything except for that pain, and it drives her crazy, right? And another lady said that she worries obsessively. Whether it's about a relationship breakdown, or she's teaching a class next week at the Elder Center where she lives. This is another part of the world. And she's obsessively worrying and planning for this class, right? She wants to be able to let it go. Oftentimes we want to let things go, but we don't know how, and we can't. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. So how do we let really difficult things go that don't want to be let go of? So that's what I'm going to talk about here. So there's steps to letting go. The first thing we have to do is recognize that something is happening that is unskillful, that's causing us suffering and pain, right? It could even be excitement for a trip that's coming up that we're overly obsessively planning. Not that any of us have been gone on many trips lately, but we have to recognize something is we're creating pain and suffering for ourselves first. And I say that because oftentimes we don't even recognize that we're doing that, right? So we have to have mindfulness to recognize. We have to be mindfully aware. I like to bring awareness to my chest and belly all the time, because they tell me when they contract or they're shaking a lot, I know something's going on. So I keep my mindfulness on my belly. My daughter says, your belly. All right. So then after we realize that we're creating suffering for ourselves, then we have to set our intention to let it go, right? And then we say, okay, I'm letting this go. I'm setting you down. Goodbye. Setting you down. Not angrily, not with, will you please go away? Just, I'm going to set you down now. And then we go on with our day, right? A lot of times, just doing that is enough. Anybody been successful at that? Right? You're like, if it's a little thing, like sometimes I will lose something that, like my little wallet or something. And I check and see that my credit cards aren't being used, so I figure it's probably somewhere that I don't remember where I set it down. I'd be like, okay, letting you go. And then I can go on with my day without worrying about it, knowing that I eventually will find it. And then I spend some time looking, then let it go, and then look again, let it go. And it usually always turns up. It does. Yeah, unless I've left it somewhere. So set your intention to let it go, then just set it down. right? If you keep picking it back up and you can't let it go, then you need to do a little bit more intentional work, right? If it becomes obsessive. Then what we do is we bring our mindfulness practice to the experience, the obsessive, not being able, worrying about our body. Or one woman said she catastrophizes everything today. So these people in my groups, they provided me with my entire talk tonight. She catastrophizes every single thing. And so let me just lead you in a short little inquiry practice, okay? So think of something, go ahead and close your eyes. And think of something that's been bothering you lately that you've had a hard time letting go of. And dropping your awareness into your body and allowing yourself to feel the sensations in your body related to this experience. If it's helpful to internally, silently label your emotions, like maybe dread or fear, anger, confusion, whatever it is, seeing if you can locate the emotions that are driving this experience in your body. Open to these emotions if you can, locate them. Feel all the sensations related to these emotions. And bring a very kind, caring, compassionate attention to your experience. Breathing into these emotions if they're too hard. Drawing on the courage of all the other practitioners in this room. Feeling the collectiveness of the human experience. Saying something kind and compassionate silently to yourself, like it's going to be okay. I can do this. I'll get through this. Taking a few breaths, energetically sending gratitude to yourself for doing the best you can. And when you're ready, opening your eyes. So we're practicing mindfulness is our skill that we're practicing. We're practicing seeing things clearly in the mind, body, and heart. We haven't been able to let go because it's an energy that needs to be felt. Right? It's an unprocessed, unresolved energy that needs to be felt. Here's there was a church bulletin. I just have to throw in something here that had a sign on the church bulletin that says potluck supper Sunday at 5 p.m. Prayer and medication to follow. I can't tell you how many people they say, "What do you do for a living?" I say, "I teach meditation." They go, "Medication?" I'm like, "Meditation. It is a form of medication, but it's meditation." Yeah. Yeah. So it's really important that we have to see the story that we're telling ourselves clearly. So this one woman, she's today in one of my groups, she said she's really angry at her job. She's in a corporate job. She feels stuck. She feels unheard, unseen, ineffectual in changing anything because of the big machine. But I was asking her, she said, "I'm really angry. I can't stand my job and I suffer a lot. How can I let this go?" So I said, "Well, what is your story about your job?" And she said all the stuff I just told you. It's a big machine. I can't change anything, blah, 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 blah. So I told her it's really important before she can let it go that she has to drop that storyline. There's probably a lot of evidence that her storyline is true. Most of our stories have a germ of truth in them, right? But the storyline keeps us from being able to let it go because it keeps us energizing the situation over and over again. And the mind is incredibly foxy and devilish and tricky. It's amazing. This past Saturday, I went to a coffee shop I go to a couple times a week. It's my social place. I sit outside, I drink my coffee, leave me alone, let's have some fun, let's talk, right? A few people, we get together. And this one lady, she's prone to being very dysregulated. She has a lot of strong, difficult emotions. But she's one of the most intelligent people I've ever known, so I enjoy talking to her. But she came and she was in one of her particularly dysregulated states this past Saturday. There were a group of 3 young ladies, really pretty, probably around 20, 22, standing together. And this lady was complaining to me. I was sitting over here complaining about one thing after another, really negative and angry and frustrated about her life and all kinds of stuff. And she was downloading it all. And then she turned to these 3 girls and she gave them a dirty look and she said, "Can you guys just move back? Give me some space." And I'm sitting there going, uh-oh, here we go. Well, you can imagine it turned into a screaming match with she was screaming at them and they were screaming at her, and it got really ugly. I got totally dysregulated because I thought I was going to have to jump up and pull these 3 young girls, off of this woman who's about in her 50s, I think, the dysregulated one. But anyhow, I got through it, but I was feeling a lot of strong, difficult emotions, and I was really, my nervous system was charged up, and for 2 or 3 days, every time I kept obsessively remembering the situation, and I kept complaining to myself about, I'm done with Miss Dysregulation. I'm going to quit hanging out with her. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. So all this righteous indignation and judgment. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute. I have something to let go of here. I'm holding on to this. My story was really good about how dysregulated she was and all this stuff. So then I started going to my body and doing what we just did, feeling my frustration, my hurt, my anger, confusion, right? And I've done this several times the past few days. Now I feel a lot of compassion towards her. And compassion towards myself for having been a party to this whole thing that lasted about 10 or 15 minutes. And the wisdom that I really don't want to hang out with her very much anymore. That's still true, but not from anger, but from I'm ready to let that relationship go because it's not serving me. It's causing me more harm than good. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if we don't, I had to let go of the story, and I also had to feel my feelings because I kept picking it back up. I went to a neuroscientist. I don't know if I ever told you guys, this neuroscientist was talking about how the human brain does not know how to let things go. It only knows how to pick things up. It was a mindfulness Buddhist conference. So what he was suggesting was that if we're going to let go, we have to pick something up in its place. What are we going to pick up? You last week talked about picking up loving kindness, right? If we're trying to feel our emotions and our feelings and we're trying to process what's going on in our body and we can't, then we need to do, let's say I'm just too triggered. Every time I try to process, I get triggered into getting angry at this person or hurt at this person. Then forgiveness practices, right? Then we go to forgiveness practices. We go to self-compassion. Oh, wow, this is really hard. I'm sorry, I'm having such a hard time. It's okay. We give ourselves compassion. We practice forgiving others, forgiving ourselves. That's why we did the forgiveness practice today, right? So it's a dance. We do our best. Oh, setting you down, going into my day, right? When I set things down that are simple, what do I replace it with? What do I pick up? Mindfulness. Mindfulness of what I'm doing right now, right? So that's for the simple letting go. Things that keep jumping back in your hands, then you want to do the deeper processing of the body, the emotions. If we can't do that, then we practice the compassion or forgiveness or loving kindness practices, right? Particularly for ourselves because we're the ones that are suffering. And forgiveness for the person who has caused us harm if someone else has caused us harm. Most people don't want to do this. And when I was saying the mind is a tricky, tricky little bugger, it is, because it'll try to, make the other people wrong and bad. It'll try to say, then it'll start beating us up, going, why can't I let this go? What's wrong with me? It'll do anything and everything but do what we need to do, which is to bring our kind attention to our experience. Right? Yeah. Here's Ann Landers. She said, hanging on to resentment is letting someone you despise live rent-free in your head. Right? It was interesting. I saw this, this is kind of unrelated, but not really. I saw this special on the brain, and they showed one part of the brain. For women, that's the part of the brain where they remember every single thing that upset them, about single thing someone said or did that upset them. And for a man, that's the remote control part of the brain for a TV. I guess they don't want to let that go. I don't know if, I'm sorry, maybe it was just a joke, but it was a show on the brain. Letting go of fear, letting go of control, letting go of things needing to go the way we want them to go, letting go of the unknown. Being okay with saying, I don't know. Yeah. Woody Allen, this is I say this one often. I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens. Right? Yeah, we don't want to die, do we? But death and letting go are a natural part of life. If you look at how we breathe, how our bloodstream works, everything is constantly picking things up and letting them go. Absorbing and releasing, absorbing and releasing. That's a natural state of our life, right? But now we have to train our mind to see this as a natural state by practicing it, right? It doesn't mean we're not going to have some control over our lives. We have to do smart things, but things that we have no control over, we get to say, look at how much I'm clinging to this, how much pain and suffering this is causing me. And can I let this go? Right? Set your intention to let it go. Sometimes when we're really hurt, it takes a long time to forgive and let go. My ex-husband, it took me over a year of daily forgiveness practices before I finally felt compassion and kindness towards him. It took over a year. What can I say? right? It takes as long as it takes, but having our intention to let go, having our intention to forgive is really important. So welcome everything, push away nothing. Welcome everything, push away nothing. These are the 5 invitations from Frank Ostaseski. Bring your whole self to the experience. Don't wait. Find a place of rest in the middle of all things. Cultivate a don't know mind. So that's what I want to leave you with. It's a practice. It's a practice. And yeah, may we all be able to let go of that which does not serve us.